Welcome to Truth Talks, the show where we talk like friends, maybe argue like cousins, and maybe make peace at the end, but not necessarily. I think I'm not going to make peace with Dr. B today. That's just the way it's going to be. Tonight, we're talking about Diddy's anonymous accusers. Should they be able to remain anonymous? We're also going to talk about the limit to getting justice for Black men. When we show up at the courthouse, does it ever work out for us? And there's another battle between Harvard and the Trumpies over DEI. And a big question for us today, are biracial people being allowed to be considered Black? Are they being erased? Are we being erased in general as Black people? We're going to get into all of that today on Truth Talks. Let's go.
Are y'all ready to roll? Let's go.
Truth Talks is back with two of the smartest people I know. You can figure out who the other one is. Please welcome Dr. Cheyenne Bryant.
What's up, True Challenge? It's your favorite Dr. Bryant. I happen to be the smart one, number one. Areva Martin happens to be the smart one, number two. And we're just figuring out where them fellas fit in. But let's move along with these topics.
You're absolutely
Girl
right.
power.
We've seen her on CNN and ABC Live, civil rights attorney and media powerhouse, Areva Martin in the house.
Well, one of the two smartest people on the show tonight. Thank you, Dr. B, for repping for the Black girls.
You're absolutely right. And I love him, even though I am highly disappointed that he is still not finished reading the autobiography of Malcolm X, but he has seen the movie. That's something. Dimitri.
I will finish the book very soon. I promise. I promise. It's a pleasure to be here.
Come on, man. This book is like at the heart of what it is to be a Black man. You got to get in there.
Misha, when an ancestor talks, you listen, young man. Listen.
You see how she do be, Areva?
Misha, you can read the
slide
notes, baby.
there, Areva?
I love how they advocate for me.
I see how you do. All right, look, let's get into trending truths. Our friends at Hair Maniacs are supporting us on this segment today, so we really appreciate that. In trending truths, our first story, a woman has been testifying against Diddy anonymously with devastating testimony. People have been sharing her identity online, even though a man got banned from the courtroom for live streaming and revealing a witness identity of another anonymous witness. Some people say if a celebrity is being named and shamed, the accuser should face the same public. But other people realize we need to protect victims who might otherwise stay silent. We want to talk about, should witnesses in high-profile trials be allowed to remain anonymous? Areva, I know you know all about this issue. We certainly could not get everybody to come into a courthouse and talk and tell their story and tell the harrowing details of what happened to them, whether or not they were participants of the crime or a victim. We cannot get everybody in to deal with the actual crime we have if we don't at least give some people anonymity.
You know, Teray, when I'm not spending time with my favorite co-hosts like all of you here, I'm on TV a lot talking about legal cases and trying to help people understand our criminal justice system, our legal system. And one of the things I want to make sure folks understand, the witnesses that you are seeing, many of the witnesses that you are seeing brought into the courtroom in the Diddy trial are witnesses that are there by subpoena. Meaning they have been forced to come into that courtroom by the prosecution, by the government. You could be going about your business, living your life, and you get a knock on your door and you get served with a subpoena, which means you have to show up and give testimony. If you do not, you can be held in contempt of court. You can actually be put in jail for disobeying a valid subpoena. So this isn't a civil case where someone is suing Diddy. And yes, in that case, they should be forced to give up their identity because they are bringing him into court and he should be able to face his accusers. In this case, this is the government. This is the prosecution is the government bringing criminal charges against Diddy. So these witnesses, they're not there voluntarily. And we heard the stylist who testified say he would rather be any place other than in that courtroom, but yet he was forced to be there by the government.
Dimitri, the court gave two witnesses anonymity. So the court did not name them, and the court sketch artist, as you see in the sketch there, does not fill in the face. But the media, the online, quickly realized who these people were and named them and showed their pictures. What do you make of anonymity in a world where the internet is just going to come right behind and say, yeah, well, we know who she is?
It doesn't exist. I think the thing about it is social media, the identity of it is to be as nosy as possible. It's to say, hey, I received this information first. Let me tell you exactly who's in this courtroom, because it just doesn't, there's no exclusives for even in criminal cases. There's no exclusives specifically for these courtrooms because people are just too damn nosy these days. I think the thing about it is we shame predators intentionally. This is what we do intentionally. But the question is, the people who are the survivors, are we attempting to shame them too? Like, I think they should absolutely remain nameless and faceless.
Yeah, Doc, it's been really difficult because these women in this trial, it's been women requesting anonymity to tell stories that are horribly mortifying to them. And then they're outed anyway. But they're like, I have a hard time talking about this if I can't do so through the cloak of privacy. How do you feel about all this?
So AAVE said something really begs subpoena, right? These women are subpoenaed by the government, by the government, and they're under oath. And so they have a lot to lose by taking a stand and not telling the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Right before Diddy got incarcerated, his team reached out to me to provide my services for him, Carisha, and the entire team, saying that they need this and he really wants to be able to move into a place of getting some help. And I consulted with my team at Dr. Bright Institute, and they said that may not be a good idea. You know why? Because of what AAVE just said. They said, you do that, guess who's going to be subpoenaed? Guess who's going to have to take a stand? And I will have to tell everything that is exchanged in session. There is no confidentiality at that point. So in addition to that, when it comes to, these victims having privacy, they don't have it. Everyone knows who Jane is. I'm not going to expose it, but 50 Cent posted it on his page and said, this is exactly who Jane possibly is, which is tied directly to him. So there is no privacy for anyone in a court. OJ Simpson didn't get privacy. The only difference is we got to watch OJ on live television. We're not able to watch the Diddy case on live television. I don't know why.
Well, because it's a federal trial and OJ was a state trial. I mean, OJ was accused of committing a crime. People who are victims perhaps should have the ability to tell their story quietly, privately in a way that doesn't leave them feeling like their own lives have been damaged. But I do want to hear you talk a little bit more, Doc, about the opportunity, let's say, with Diddy that his team asked you to provide your mental health services to their community.
Yeah, totally. When his representatives reached out and said, "Hey, Doc, we would love to, set up a session with you." And
was it Christina?
I'm not giving away any names, Teray. This is not TMZ. This is not TMZ. What I am going to say is they reached out, and I said, okay. And the truth is, I asked. I said, well, is this something that they want to be a public session or a private session? And I asked that because I have a lot of celebrities like Nick Cannon and Cam Newton and B. Simone and so forth that have had public sessions that they've recorded, right, and allowed the public to use for their betterment, to see if there's tools and things that they can get from these interviews or from these sessions. So I said, is this going to be public or private? And they said, we'd like for it to be private because he definitely wants to be able to, get some help along with Carisha and along with other of his employees as well. And so what I'm saying is that I'm happy. I always look back at it when I look at this case and I'm going, holy crap, thank God that I did not, take that on. And we were not able to do that, because I would have been subpoenaed in court for sure. Oh, for sure I'd have been subpoenaed, because we would have been processing a lot of stuff in those sessions that I would not want to have to be privy to on a stand, to our point, with the public watching in court, giving away my name, sharing my information on social media. To me, that is a risk to all the victims. I think that they should be protected in their testimonies, protected in telling their stories. I just think that should be a public thing.
If somebody speaks to AAVE in this sort of way, they would have attorney-client privilege, right? Like But if somebody speaks to you, there's no, in the mental health therapist world, there's no sort of clinician client
it is.
privilege?
Yes. There is a client coach or client therapist privilege. However, if the court subpoenas me, that overpowers all privilege that they have. I have to show up and I have to be under oath and I have to tell what it is, because, what's spoken or shared in session can be used in the court of law as evidence. I don't think that's okay. Even as me being a therapist that transitioned into a psychology expert life coach, I don't think that's okay. I think there should be a place where a safe space is a safe space. Use other aspects as evidence. I just don't think mental health should be a place where you use that as evidence. That's just my opinion.
Reva, quickly, I think the notion that they are reaching out to one or other therapist to say, hey, we need help, shows that they understood we have a deep spiritual problem. This man has a problem and he needs to be talking to people to deal with this problem.
I don't know if it shows that. It may show that we need to set up a defense for this criminal prosecution. You are making an assumption that they're reaching out to Dr. B or any therapist because they do really want to acknowledge the problem and then fix it. But I don't know that to be the case at all. We don't know that to be the case at all. We know that oftentimes defendants in criminal cases reach out to folks to set up a defense. We've heard about Diddy calling people saying, hey, do you remember when we did XYZ? You remember it that way, right? Wink, wink. So no, I don't make that assumption. I think this is a guy that knew he was going down and he was trying to do everything in his power to not go down, including create this sympathy that now I'm getting help from a female, a Black female. I've hurt Black females, but now I'm seeking help from a Black female.
Well, yeah. So no, it's a great idea. So I appreciate your cynicism. So perhaps he's saying, let's pull Dr. Bryant into our show of we're trying to be better, Your Honor, and jury, don't convict us because we're in the midst of trying to improve as a human being. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, and then you got to remember at that point, right, we weren't in court. All of this wasn't exposed. And so for me, as being a professional in the mental health field, I just looked at it like you were kind of saying, Teray, like, okay, they want help. They want assistance. They want sessions. Absolutely. This is what I do. Sign me up. But by, again, the grace of God, he definitely detoured that. And I'm okay with that. I'm definitely okay with that.
Dimitri, going back to perhaps life in Chicago, I think you understand how sometimes some people are like, I need to be anonymous in this situation in terms of testifying. We've talked about people being subpoenaed, so they are forced to testify. But when you're forced, sometimes you're like, can we please just keep this private so the world does not know that I have testified?
Absolutely. I think being anonymous in this case, in a lot of cases where it may be life and death, being anonymous is not hiding, it's surviving for a lot of people. It is your ability to maintain a normal life after you leave that courtroom, maintain a life after you leave that courtroom. So for a lot of these people, this isn't a small deal. We've seen how powerful Diddy is in situations outside of the courtroom. We see how much money impacts how much he's able to control. So if it was me and they was calling me to the stand, I'd like to be anonymous. And I think they should grant that to every single witness, because clearly they need some witnesses if they ask therapists, every single witness that enters that courtroom.
Is it fair to the defendant? Is it fair?
I mean, has the defendant been fair? That's the, I mean, hey, maybe not. In a lot of cases, I can see why you make that point. Maybe not. But this is life and death here we're talking about. This is delicate situations we're talking about. It may not be.
The defendant can see who he's talking to or who she's talking to. The accuser is not hidden from the defendant. They are hidden from the public. So their lawyers can speak to this person. The defendant can see the person, right, and speak back to them in their own way when they get to testify, when they get to cross. So, I mean, it's not hidden to the defendant, to the person who perhaps allegedly did these things. It's only hidden to the public. And sometimes the conversation needs to be between me and you who did this to me and not have the whole world. It would be wrong, I think, to have only anonymous accusers, right? But sometimes in a complicated case like this with a powerful person, you're going to need to have some anonymous accusers, or at least trying to be anonymous accusers. Ariva.
Toure, spoken like a true lawyer. I want to give you a lot of kudos for that, because you're right. The defendant knows who these witnesses are. The witnesses are sitting in the courtroom. They're on the witness stand, and the defendant's lawyers have an opportunity to cross-examine those witnesses. They have an opportunity to present them with text messages, emails, and all of the evidence that has been presented during this case. So there is no unfairness. There's no prejudice to the defendant by simply keeping the name of the witness out of public view. And a lot of times it is for the protection of witnesses. In many cases, these witnesses are facing peril. They're facing harm. They're facing the possibility of being intimidated, of being harassed, maybe even facing bodily injury just by coming into a courtroom testifying. A couple of days ago on the show, we were talking about folks snitching or folks giving testimony about crime in their neighborhood. If we want people to speak up, if we want people to help with the solving of crimes, we got to make it such that they can do so and not be at risk for having bodily harm done to them or to their family members.
Do you think that this is normal as far as the way things quite often go in courtrooms, as far as having, I think we've had 2 anonymous defendants so far, like giving significant testimony. And the government puts up, let's say, I think they were going to put up like 20, 25 people. And then 2 of them are telling long, significant anonymous stories. Like, is that an unusual amount to you?
It's not unusual at all. And keep in mind that Diddy has been charged under the RICO statute, a statute that used to only be associated with mobsters or the mafia. But we've seen prosecutors get real creative, like in the R. Kelly case, and use these RICO statutes to claim that these individuals are using their businesses as criminal enterprises. And a part of what the predicate charges against Diddy are arson, bribery, extortion, sex trafficking. So although he's not your typical mobster, the prosecution's case is that he is operating a criminal enterprise and engaged in criminal activity very similar to what we would see in a case against someone in the mafia.
I mean, when we think about somebody as allegedly dangerous as Diddy has been, arson against Kid Cudi's car, home invasion against Kid Cudi, kidnapping people, these are all things that he has been charged with in some of the lawsuits. He's charged with much more serious things. You can see why this is a dangerous, potentially, allegedly, arguably dangerous person, where at least certain witnesses would say, I want to try to have, some, as Demetri said, a modicum of a life after this thing, after this trial. So they may need anonymity to try to be able to tell the truth. But this case has made it really, really complicated and sent a horrible message to all the people in future trials who feel like they need anonymity to be able to testify, because we have seen how difficult it is to get anonymity in a big trial. Like both of the anonymous witnesses, their anonymity was blown online almost within minutes of them hitting the stand. So, I don't know what what future people who are like wanting to move. Okay, so I want to move on to another issue that is really, really important. This brother, Telvin Osborne, this is a different kind of justice story. Activists are demanding police reopen the investigation into the story of a white woman who shot and killed this brother, and I'm using that word advisedly. He went viral for saying he preferred white women over black women, saying he'd rather be with a dog than with a sister. Now, the question that I want you guys to deal with, and let's go to you first, Demetri. Should we be fighting for justice for someone who is out here openly disrespecting his community? So kind of like, we say we're rooting for everybody black and every brother is, but if this person is hateful toward the community, should we still be fighting for them, or should we let them fly?
I think even the fallen deserves fairness. The thing about it is you can't call it justice if it's not a fight for everybody. Contrary to him, I hate the beliefs he obviously we're preaching online, because I'm on the whole other side. I am somewhere else. I am pro-black women. But the thing about it is, if he wanted a dog over a black woman, he has his preferences. Obviously, freedom of speech, you can put it online. But the thing about it is, when we speak of justice and death, it's If we throw this out the window, we are advocating for them to throw justice out of the window every time. So I'm going to say the fallen deserves fairness. Yes, I have to. But you don't have to agree with the sentiments he was preaching.
Doc, how do you feel about Black people feeling activist egg riding for somebody who's hating our community?
Well, this is the thing, this brother was lost in the sauce, and just because he's lost don't mean that we have to be. To hate your community is a direct reflection of his self-hate, his identity crisis. To want to date outside your race is okay. That's just a preference. But to say that you rather date a dog than to date a Black woman, that is a direct attack on Black women, on the Black race. You happen to be Black, bro. And so it's unfortunate that he died at the hands of what he was choosing. But I do think that we still have a responsibility as Black people to represent, to bring justice to every Black person, because of that one Black man, his justice does equal a win for us. And it is a representation of who we are as a Black community, a culture, and a race of beautiful people who do fight for each other, who do deserve justice. And we do have loyalty and verticalness for our people. We definitely do.
I'm going to say, Teray, all kin folks, all skin folks, I guess, are not kin folks. And of course, as an officer of the court, as a lawyer, I'm going to say the criminal justice system should do what it should do. They should make every effort to hold accountable. And if this girlfriend did shoot him, not accidentally as she's claiming, then she should be held accountable. But look, we got a limited amount of energy. We have a limited amount of resources, and going out and protesting in the streets and, getting involved in civil unrest over this guy and folks that have disdain for our Black community, I just don't think Black women are here for it. And we did not see protests out on the street when this law enforcement agency decided to drop the charges against his girlfriend. Folks just weren't there for this brother in that way. Now, we're there for the criminal justice system doing what it should do, but protests, nah, I think we're going to sit this one out.
His family is divided. Some of them are saying the death is heartbreaking, which it is. Any death is heartbreaking. People of family is also saying that he should not have behaved the way that he did online. That's obviously true, as Doc said. You want to date outside your race, that's fine. But the super hyper negative comments just to try to bring hate attention to yourself. I'd rather date dogs. That's ridiculous. You would not. That's disgusting. You shouldn't be even speaking like that. But yeah, I'm with AAVE as far as we have a lot of problems, and to stop and put our energy towards somebody who is hating us, who is not participating in the community in any way, not in an energy way, not in any sort of intellectual way, just hating on us. Nah, bruh, you stood on that. That's where you lied. And then a white woman killed you when you said white women were better. Well, you learned. Dimitri, he learned. He learned the hard way, but he learned.
Yeah, the thing about it is, they say her father is a police officer. To me, I don't want to pull away from who I am as a person. Like I said, even the fallen deserves fairness. But to some degree, my mother always told me, you die by the sword you live by. And if you wanted to be there, and that's how you die, that's just what you needed. Not what you needed, but that's what, that's the choice you made. It would have been a different story if he advocated for his community and stayed with his community. And then when an uproar happened, we would have been right there beside him.
George Floyd didn't advocate for us. And there's ways that you could say that his life was lived in a way that made us look bad. But he was not anti-Black. At least give me like that, right? And we're not talking, and when we talk about George Floyd, we're not really talking about his life. When we talk about Breonna Taylor, we're not talking about her life. We're talking about the way their lives were ended when they met the police, right? And you deserve justice when the state comes into your space, your proximity, be it your home or you on the street, right? This brother is being actively anti-Black, and I don't want to see any Black people killed for being Black by anyone. So he is a victim of racism, even though he was a proponent of internal racism.
There you go.
Spewing his internal racism all over the place. But yeah, no, I can't see anybody advocating and spending our precious finite energy on someone who is actively anti-Black.
Can I talk, though, Teray, about some of the legal issues here? Because whether we protest or not, which we have chosen not to, there are some issues in this case that need to be investigated. This girlfriend's story about cleaning the gun and accidentally shooting him, that does not meet the smell test. I hope there is a further investigation. I hope that justice is done for this family, even though we may not take it to the streets, because it does not appear that this was an accidental shooting. It appears that they were having an argument. We know alcohol was allegedly involved. And I'd like to see from the investigators if this is a case where this woman should really be charged with a crime rather than this case being dropped because perhaps she has some relationship to a sheriff in this community.
Yeah, and this is a case that took place in Georgia. And we know Georgia is known for hiding evidence and throwing rocks and hiding their hands. And with this lady's father being an officer, I truly believe that, he had a big role in making sure that this investigation took a turn. Her charges were dropped when the legal system already said that the phone call and the evidence is very skeptical. So if it's skeptical, why are her charges dropped? Have you proven that this gun fired off on accident? Have you proven that there's evidence to say that she did not? Have you ruled that out? Right. So to me, it's tricky. Georgia does this thing. And that's why I'm so happy. I love my Atlanta. I love my Georgia, but I'm so happy I'm a LA girl because they get to hiding and covering things. They do it everywhere. But Georgia has really, even with the twins, Georgia's doing that now with the twins and their evidence. It just has to stop. And this is all systemic racism. And I don't think he got what he deserved. I just think that he got what Black folks have been experiencing year after year after year, whether they're dating a white woman or not. And it's unfortunate. And hopefully, to AAVE, they can pick this case back up. And that's where I believe us folks that are Black would have to be the ones that are participating in this to have them pick this case back up, because this Black family deserves justice, regardless of his position on us. And this lady deserves to do the time for the crime, the murder that she allegedly, was behind the trigger of.
But can I say that this is a cautionary tale, Black folks out there that want to dog out your community? It is the Black community that gets these cases, the kind of high profile attention that often will cause the police to go back and do an investigation. Yep. It is us taking to the streets. It's us using our social media accounts that often will cause police to reopen cases that they have closed. So if you want the kind of heat that we can bring as a Black community for your loved one, tell your loved ones to quit trashing us. We are going to be there for Black folks, but we also need them to be there for us.
100%.
Dimitri, do you think he's going to get justice, Dimitri?
Ain't no justice coming from this. There's no justice because at this point, what he asked for and who he chose to live his life with have concluded their case. And if Black people aren't going to fight for it to reopen and rush the streets, there's nothing going to come of it. I think it's a done deal.
I mean, I don't really want to see any Black death be forgotten. And even if the person is racist, I still want them to be treated as a human being, which is perhaps more than the racists want for us. But, I want to keep an eye on this story and see how it goes. But I don't want to be marching and riding for this brother because, the anti-Blackness is too much. We've been dealing with so much anti-Blackness from white people. When I get it from Black people, I'm like, okay, go ahead. Go off with your white girl. Go to the trailer. Have a good time over there with that. Because don't bring that over here.
And the moral of the story is the white girlfriend killed this guy. That's what happened. Regardless of whether the court says it or not, that's what happened.
Get Out. Get Out was a good movie about this. But go ahead. I like it.
I want to move on to our politicking segment because it's actually really hurtful to see this going on, AAVE. There's Harvard canceling all its affinity graduation ceremonies. So there's no Black graduation, no Latinx, Latino, no LGBTQ plus graduation. A lot of other schools followed: Notre Dame, Wichita State, U of Louisville. Harvard's Black Alumni Society came in and raised $46,000 on their own to hold their own celebration. And AAVE, it's complicated. You're a Harvard Law grad. Congrats on that. But we see Harvard in one side fighting the good fight against the Trumpies, against DEI and the other things they're dealing with. But then they seem to capitulate on this side. What do you think is going on?
Look, two things can be true at the same time. Harvard did file a lawsuit against the Trump administration when other universities like Columbia University did not. When Columbia took a knee, Harvard did stand up. But let's not get it twisted. Harvard, through Black president, first African-American female president, Claudine Gay, just a year or so ago, under the bus, drove it over her frontwards and backwards. Harvard has disbanded its DEI programs in the form that many of us that went there know it. Harvard, as you said, canceled its affinity graduations. Harvard should not be applauded for being some, institution that is holding up diversity, equity, and inclusion. So at the same time that they are suing the Trump administration, and let's be clear about that, that is to maintain its position as, one of the world's greatest universities, is to maintain its $53 billion endowment, is to maintain its, tuition, nearing $100,000 for some students, and it's to maintain its business. But I am not at all persuaded that Harvard has a true commitment to Black folks, to brown folks, to diversity. And I am, like many graduates, really, really disappointed in this university, because with that $53 billion, it could tell Trump to, kiss where the sun doesn't shine. It could do what Williams College is doing and say, we don't even want the government's money if it comes with strings such as eliminating diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's not doing that. So no, Harvard doesn't deserve a medal. It's just doing what any company does, trying to engage in self-preservation.
Let me push back a little bit, Counselor, because I think that Harvard is trying to be there for Black and brown folks, and they are feeling like the Trump administration is attacking us in a very large way on multiple fronts. We cannot fight on every front at the same time. We have to let go on this so that we can fight on that and come back for this later. And I know we don't like being let out, but we can't have multiple wars going on at once. Go ahead.
No, Toure, either you're with us or you're not. And when times get tough, we need you to get tougher. We don't need you to capitulate. If Harvard, with $53 billion in its endowment, can't stand up to the Trump administration, what does that say to any other university? And I'm not going to give it a pass by saying we can't fight on, multiple fronts. I don't agree with that. You can definitely fight this battle against the Trump administration. Williams College is much, much, much smaller than Harvard, and it's telling the administration, we don't want your dollars, because they come with strings that are antithetical to who we are as an institution. So Harvard either supports Black folks or it does not. And from its history, I'm not convinced that it does.
Dimitri, what do you think?
And the thing about it is, that's a graduate speaking like that. From that should tell you something. I think I used to hear a long, long time ago when I was young, without a place to gather, our voices scatter. I used to hear it all the time when I was a kid. And it meant without celebration and memory and everything we doing, you start to lose tradition. It gets lost, because Harvard is in itself attempting to keep tradition while erasing the core things that provide it. And I personally agree with Ms. Martin for sure. The idea that if you're not with us, you are completely against us. Don't pick which way you gonna fight, which hand you gonna swing with. No, throw the whole fight, because Harvard is one of the richest institutions. And if anybody could do it, they can do it.
Doc, I'm sad to see the kids not have affinity graduations, because I know how important that can be to be with your community that probably helped you get through Harvard on the last day of being a Harvard student.
If you wanted to, y'all, you would. And that's to Harvard. Anything you want to support, you're going to support. And the fact that they're not supporting it shows where their position is on this issue when it comes to Black students. There was a 14 to 18% decline of graduates in their last graduating class of Black students. That shows you their level of support for us. I totally agree with Areva. You cannot partially support us. You cannot be in the gray area and support us. You're either supporting or you're fucking not. And I think it's time for us as Black people to draw a square and stand on it and say, listen, when it comes to our issues, we tend to protest and make noise and pull back and do all these things. And guess what? It benefits everybody and oftentimes not us. But then when it's time for us to have a Black issue, this is the type of stuff that happens. Where is our support? Where are the people who are supposed to be allying with us? Where are the students in the Harvard partnerships and the people who were donating to the Harvard student scholarships now? Where are they at now? Where are the folks who are donating money, getting buildings with their name on it in Harvard, who are saying, we support DEI, when it was a financial gain for them? Where are they at? They're not here, because everybody wants to be a nigga until it's time to be treated like a nigga. That is the problem that I have with this situation, straight up. They all like the culture until it's time to feel the fight of the weight of being the culture. No, you fighting with us or you're not. That's just what it is.
It's always a good segment when we could quote Paul Mooney. Everybody want to be a nigger till it's time to be a nigger. Thank you for bringing that up. I love that. Fantastic conversation. I want to move into our main topic, which should also be a fantastic conversation. The U.S. Census has changed how it counts people. Thank you, Hair Maniac, for rolling with us today. The 2020 census marked the first time that biracial and multiracial people were allowed to choose more than one race. But after reports of inflated numbers, the census is recounting and fixing the census based on what government workers assume is dominant. That sounds weird. Some say this is erasure of us and ignores the fact that many Black people have more than one identity. Listen to this.
I don't know who needs to hear this, but Afro-Latinos have told y'all, right? Biracial Black people have told y'all. And other Black people have told y'all over and over again that mixed Black folks exist, okay? As someone who grew up with West Indian roots and African American roots, right? Those are different cultures. I am allowed to say that I am ethnically mixed, okay? Mixed Black folks don't have to be biracial to be mixed, right?
It's a very interesting point about the ethnic complexity of our community. And the census here is flattening all of that nuance in modern America of mixed people, which is so much of what makes America what it is. So in the current way, or the new way the census is going to do things, if a single white mom lives with her 3 biracial kids, all 4 of them may be counted as white, like, whatever, which is perhaps driving toward changing the numbers, because white people are very afraid that we are moving toward a minority majority country by 2035, 2040. So we're in America where if you have a hint of brown in your skin, you're Black, but now they're trying to erase diversity, perhaps to boost the number of white people in this country. Dr. B, you're biracial. Was it significant to you when the census started letting people choose more than one race?
Yeah, I'm multiracial, and I have a kind of a 2-part perspective on this. I think that people have the right to identify with what they want to identify with. Why do I say that? Because as a Black, Mexican, and French Creole person, I would always mark Black. And my grandmother, who was French Creole, not Black Creole, French Creole, she would get upset with me and say, baby, you also are Hispanic and French Creole. I'd like for you to represent that as well. And I would always tell my grandmother, Mariah, I'm like, okay, but I identify as a Black woman. Right. But my mother, who was Mexican and French Creole, would say, you're Black, you're Black, you're Black. So what am I saying is that for me, I think it's important for me to figure out what I identify with and have the right to check what I identify with. Now, in regard to it making it a Black and white world and trying to dissipate everything in between, I do think that that is attempting to create an identity crisis. It's attempting to make other races inferior to the Black and white. And to your point, Teray, it is definitely an attempt to raise the numbers of white Americans. And so that they can take those numbers, use it for statistics, and do what? Control the narrative, control media, and then control all of the services, products, and resources they are attempting to push out based on the stats and surveys that they have created. Absolutely.
I mean, when you're biracial, you are getting pulled in both directions. Lots of biracial people talk about this. They have 2 different sides to them, or maybe 4 different sides to them, and they feel both an affinity toward the different sides, and also sometimes people pushing them, saying, well, you're not white enough, you're not Black enough, you're not Latino enough, or Latina enough, whatever. Lenny Kravitz actually is one of the more famous multiracial people who has been really courageous in talking about how this has landed in him. Roll the Lenny Kravitz video.
In school, you'd have these things you'd have to fill out sometimes, you know, and it's race. And there would be, like, well, okay, my great-grandmother's Cherokee Indian, my father's a Russian Jew, my mom's Bahamian. What the hell do I put on this thing? But then the teacher or somebody come over and black, you know.
Ariva, we see in his story, in Dr. B's story, just the complexity of being multiracial, but then a world that wants you to say, no, you're just one thing. Do you think this census choice, this change by the census, is some sort of attempt to raise the number of white people in this country?
So before I answer this, I know you're going to call me sinister because you've used that word throughout the week that I've been hanging out with you.
Cynical.
But cynical, yes. So I'm going to say that which you're going to probably characterize as cynical again. Absolutely. This is nothing but white supremacy at play. This is nothing but an administration attempting to increase the number of white folks and to claim people who are biracial as white and to convince biracial people that it is better to be white, because we know we've been taught throughout history in this country, be anything you can be but black. Because anti-blackness is so pervasive, not only in white culture, in Latino culture, even we know in our own community, there are sentiments of anti-blackness that are still so prevalent. So yes, this is an attempt to increase the number of white folks, and it's dangerous, Touré. You know why it's dangerous? Because if white folks either don't have to check a box, or if they get to check all the white boxes, then we are never going to get to equity in companies, equity in organizations. So this big fight for diversity, equity, and inclusion is so tied to this whole census thing, because if the company is all white, then why do we need to do diversity, equity, inclusion? Why do we need a diversity, equity, inclusion officer? Why do we need policies? Why do we need procedures? Because we don't even know what the numbers are. So we better wake up. We better pay attention to this. This is huge. And it's something that's not getting a lot of media attention. So I'm so glad we're talking about it on the show today, because it's a huge issue.
Yeah.
You know, white people are definitely an oppressed class dealing with lots and lots of racism in their lives. So we definitely have to make sure that the world works out for them. But there's another side of this that I want to bring in too, because social media, I saw this TikTok the other day that kind of blew my mind. This sister raising the point that biracial people with a black mom are different, perceived different, look at blackness differently than biracial people with a white mom.
So I believe that it is true. It is very true. The way that people perceive the world is based on learned behavior. And now studies have shown, and that when a black child is raised with a white mother, they experience less identity crisis. They feel and perceive to be more accepted by society than a black and white child that is raised by a black mother has more of an identity crisis, not because the black mama did anything wrong. We're talking about their experience of having a white mom who has already a very organic, innate white privilege. We're not saying she's racist. White privilege mindset and way of raising that child gives that child a different optics and perception of the world, of themselves. That child is watching that white mom go into the world and be accepted, go into the world and be respected, go into the world and have a different privilege, versus that child watching their black mother having to fight a different battle. This is all learned behavior, not even talking about conversations that these parents are having with their kids at home. That black child starts to see the optics of, wait a minute, I'm identifying with mom and these issues and these encounters and how she's perceived and disrespected or respected or honored or dishonored in the world. And so they have a different perspective. My mother is not a black woman. So this is just a real story. I can relate to that, meaning I had a real big problem, y'all, with understanding racism as a young girl. It took me literally to get into college and get my African American studies a degree. And I was in that class, Touré, and that whole class attempted to tear my ass up because I was saying to them, I respect racism, but I never experienced it firsthand. And they were attacking me, but they were attacking me saying, what do you mean? You're Black. Are you disconnected from your Black roots? What I was saying was, no, right, exactly. I hear you, Teray. I'm like, no, but I'm giving you my experience from one, being raised in a household with two women who, again, Hispanic and French Creole. There wasn't racism that happened to be impaired or issues we talked about in our household. And I didn't see them go out into the world, and I'm just being honest, and have a certain struggle that I was able to see my father's mother, who's Black, have. So it's very different.
Y'all lived in Compton, right? Y'all live in Compton, right?
No, we live in San Pedro, which is a community in Los Angeles. We are from Los Angeles, sweetie. LA natives, San Pedro.
Okay, I don't know about San Pedro. We got to figure that out later. Roll a video that my friend Chris made on TikTok so we can get into that issue.
Mixed children who have white mothers tend to be more exposed to internalized racism and colorism because of the lack of intersectionality among white feminists.
People are like, yeah, children with white moms tend to be a little anti-Black. And I was like, shoot, I got a white mom. I will admit that there was some definite anti-Blackness like stuff when I lived with my white mom.
And my grandmother sees my brother's shirt, and he's wearing a shirt that looks just like this with Malcolm X and the rifle. And my grandma is like, really? Malcolm X with a gun? So violent.
Ariva, I respect all those people's opinions, all those people's lived experiences, and I'm sure that everybody who has these mixed situations, as they express their Blackness, perhaps maybe their white family will be like, we don't understand, especially people from the older generations are like, we don't understand. Fine. But we're drilling down on, if you have a white mom and a Black dad, you're going to be different than if you have a white mom and a Black dad. And I don't know if I see any consistency within that. Because like, if you have a white mom, and I think the things that Dr. B said that the white mom is giving you are correct, but that child also has a Black dad, so who's also giving you Blackness from his perspective. So I'm not sure I see a consistency, but what do you see?
Well, it's interesting because I posed this question to my daughter, who's Gen Z, and asked her, because I immediately said that I think that a biracial kid that grows up with a Black mom is probably treated differently than a biracial kid that grows up with a white mom. So I asked my daughter, Morgan, what did she think? And she said, absolutely positively not, that amongst her peer group, young 20-year-olds, that they didn't see a difference, between the color of the mom, whether it made a difference. And I think, I'm going to date myself some, it made a difference in my community growing up in a Black community because we didn't have a lot of fathers around in the community. So those Black moms were holding it down for biracial kids. And I don't know, in that day, your mama was the central point of your family. So if your mama was Black, you were Black. Now, of course, the father being Black in America, you were also considered Black. But I do think there was a difference between those biracial kids who had Black mothers versus those that did not.
Demetri, I wonder if forcing or asking biracial people to make a choice, be it socially or with the census or what have you, is that working to divide the Black community in general?
Man, I just love to be the maniac. So like for me, everybody Black should just put white on they, just check it white. Just fuck the numbers up because they already gonna fuck them up for us. So let's fuck it up some more. That's just me. But no, in actuality, of course it is. Of course it does a ton more harm than good. I look at it like what plagues my mind when we actually have these conversations. From what I've seen, the world loves mixed babies, but like hate mixed personalities. Like it's cool visually, and then the moment it becomes political, it's a problem. Like that's what I see in my community when I look at our own people. But for me, the whole thing about the Black mama and the white mama and I think it's about what we've seen in our own cultures. Like in Black culture, the Black mother is the backbone. Like she's everything for a Black household. A white mother is often different at times. She doesn't have to be the protector. She doesn't have to, the Black mama got to be everything. And there's a level of culture that a Black mom instills in those children that a white mom, we question if they can. So of course, it's automatically going to be different. Of
Ariva,
course, it's a very large deal.
Ariva, I see what he's saying, and I understand that moms have a critical role in our lives in terms of teaching us about culture and tradition and rooting us in what being part of this community is about, be it, our community or other communities. But dads are also very, very important in teaching people about, teaching children about culture and community and tradition. And I think we're selling the dads a little short if you think there's a consistent thing about if you have a black mom, you're going to be like this. If you have a white mom, you're going to be like this. There's a black man in half of those situations that is there to also talk to the children about this is how you be a black person.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Ray, because there are some studies out there that show, despite how Black dads are maligned in the media, that Black dads are the most engaged demographic when it comes to, doing homework with their kids or being involved with their kids. Now, we don't often, lift up Black fathers as you're trying to, suggest in this conversation, but there is a lot of data out there that shows there are a lot of Black dads doing a lot of great stuff. But the reality is a lot of us, and I'm one of them, grew up without a Black father in the household. And so it is that Black mother that we look to that was the pillar of our families, the pillar of communities. But I think back to my daughter Morgan's point, younger people don't necessarily see it in the same way that our generation sees it. For her, they don't see race as we even see race. So when I brought this whole census question up to her, she's kind of like scratching her head like, huh? Like, y'all still tripping on over that? So I think, Dimitri, your generation, you're probably closer to my daughter's age. I don't know. I don't know if you all are tripping on race the way we perhaps did some years ago.
Dimitri, what do you think about how, in your relationship, in your experience, how moms teach Blackness? Have you talk about that, what you've seen, because that's what we're getting down to. If you're the only person, you're the only Black person, and you're the Black mom, you're the only Black person in the parenting, are you teaching them more Blackness?
I think the thing about it is, if you're looking at me in my life, I've turned out more like my mother than anybody else. Like exactly how the world treated my mother, whether it was good or bad, is how it shaped me to be. So if I saw the world being disrespectful towards my mother, I sought to be the protector of that. That's what instilled it in me. When I saw my mother had no place to voice her own opinions and her thoughts and her issues of what she dealt with when she was younger, I became that safe space to talk to. So I just think how pivotal a mother is in the household, we drastically undervalue. As a Black father, I don't think that's not particularly the conversation we're having, but as a Black father, I don't think I turned out more like my dad, and my dad was present. What do you
think about Ariva's daughter's point that race is less important to you, your generation, your peers, than it has been to me and Ariva and our generation?
I agree. I absolutely agree wholeheartedly. And I don't think it's me. Now, I'm speaking outside of myself because I have some would say I have a pretty mature mindset. But like for those under me, even in school, race is being taught less. It's not that they care less. It's not at the forefront. Like when I was in 8th grade, racism was here. It was smack in the face. We watched videos of who Martin Luther King and Malcolm X was and all these things. Now they just put posters up on Black History Month and say that's who that is, but never explain the significance of these people. So the thing about it is it's being pushed out of our generation. Not necessarily us not caring, but they're not. You have less people signing up to be in the NC.
Doc, what do you think of this notion that the younger generation, Dimitri and Taylor, they're thinking about race less than we were?
Well, I think it's to Dimitri's point, but I think it's a subjective depending on the household you lived in. My household, again, we did not have a predominantly Black household. Of course, there was Black people in it. And my mother, who was the mother, the anchor, the big mama of the house, she wasn't a Black woman. She was literally French Creole. She was not Black Creole. And so for my optics, I love when you said this, Dimitri, about learning how to be Black. I did not learn how to be Black from my household because my household wasn't a Black household. I'm biracial, right? Multiracial. I learned how to be Black from my friends that were Black. This is just, I'm giving you a real perspective of multiracial. My father was, this is my point, right? He's a Black man. But during the developmental ages of a child, we are reared and leaning and more dependent on our mothers. That's male or female. It doesn't matter who it is. For the most part, unless the father's a single father, if the mother's in the house, that child is more dependent in the developmental ages on their mother. So what I'm saying is I learned how to be Black outside of the house, and I brought in questions into the house, and my family was very good with answering those questions because they knew they had a multiracial little girl. I had questions about my hair. I had questions about how do I show up as a Black woman. When I first became a therapist, I went to an all Black psychologist conference, and this is a true story. I walked out, called my grandmother and said, "Mom, I'm uncomfortable." She said, "Why?" I said, "Because it feels overwhelming, oversaturated, and I feel out of place." And she said, "Baby, but they're all Black." I said, "I understand that, but I don't know how to fit in." And this is just a real representation of being multicultural, that everybody doesn't feel like they fit in because you are split. You do have different races. And if you're not raised by a Black mother or a full-bred Black household, then you do have a different perspective. And you do have to figure out, like I did, where do you fit in being Black? How do you fit in being Black? And lastly, hold on, how do I fit in as a Black woman? And so those are pivotal points for me where I had to realize, wait a minute. And then when I figured out, hold on, what it was to be Black, your girl went all the way proud pro-Black. You know, it's like, I'm like, yo, this is what
we feel your pro-Blackness through the screen 100% for sure. Like
as a young girl, Torre, and I have to be transparent with that. I had to learn to identify with this because my household didn't talk about racism and Black and white and all these issues. They just didn't. We just had love and we had family.
That's what I want to talk about. I want you to talk a little bit about your development as a Black person from a mixed household. I want to bring Tracy Ellis Ross in this conversation because she's an amazing mixed person who I love. So roll that video real quick.
I feel very honored to have had the opportunity to represent Black women, and I've taken it with a lot of responsibility. And it's really important to me that we are able to be seen with the humanity and the power and the beauty and all of it, but really the humanity, that we can be all the things.
Shai, how did you learn to be a Black woman, which you were alluding to before, as a biracial woman? And how does your non-Black mother help you get there?
Right. And so I was always a Black woman, right? DNA and who I am and hair. But culturally, I had to learn what that culture looked like for me. And I wasn't always accepted fully by Black women through K through 12. And that's just the truth. I was either, not Black enough or too Black for the Mexicans over here. And I damn sure didn't fit in with the white people. And I wasn't trying to. I'm just keeping it real. So I had to really figure out what my identity was. And once I figured out what that identity was, which is now I'm vertical in who I am, there became this extreme, powerful Black woman thing. And lastly, I'll land on this. When NAACP, my branch, approached me and asked me to run for president, most people would have jumped to the opportunity. You know what I told them? I said, I need to pray on it. I need to sit on that, to make sure I can really be in service in this position, because I want to represent and I want to serve in the right capacity. I want to make sure that I, as a Black woman, would be able to represent our Black culture and community collectively in the right way, because I knew that I had come from a place of, again, we had like a hippie household. It was love, it was family, and that was all we needed. We didn't talk about this person's white, this person's Black. So when I said in my class in college that I hadn't experienced racism, I was very naive to racism. I had to learn it. I had to see it in my adult age to really understand the pain behind it and have a different perspective of our people. And that's the truth, because when you're not raised in a full Black home and you don't get to really understand the nuances, then you don't have the experience, and words don't teach, experience does. And I have to take my words, go get my experience, and here I am.
I mean, there's no Black person who has not experienced racism. It's not a white person coming up to you and saying the N-word. We are here in America because of racism. Systemic racism impacts all of us, whether or not somebody actually says these words to you, where the police beat you down because you're Black. But Areva, Black mothers are critical to teaching Blackness and putting us on the road to being proud and being representing the community. What do you think about all that?
No, 100% Black mothers. I'm one of them. We are a rare breed, and we do set the standards, I think, for the culture for our communities. But I don't want to discount Black women like Dr. B and my good friend Kamala Harris and other biracial Black women who stand in their Blackness, because we know there's an effort by the Trump administration, by Donald Trump himself, to define who is Black, who gets to say they're Black and who's not Black. And we have to make sure in our community that we are embracing women and men like Dr. B, like Kamala Harris, like anybody that defines themselves as Black, because we and these individuals, they get to define themselves. We cannot let Donald Trump or MAGA or anyone define what Blackness is in our community. So great conversation about Blackness. Keep on standing in your Blackness, Dr. B. And we as a Black community got to keep accepting that Blackness comes in many shades, many forms, and many expressions. And it's not just the Black mothers, although I'm one of them, and I rep for the Black mothers, but there are a lot of white mothers and Mexican mothers and Asian mothers and other mothers that are raising strong Black people.
And I'll be a Black mama as well, Reva, with you at some point, which would be an interesting concept to be a Black mama that wasn't raised by one. That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah. No, but the Blackness that you've learned from your community, from your mom, who clearly loves Black people, from your dad, from the people in your life, has flowed into you. And we see how a mixed person can be as pro-Black and as radiating Black energy as any of us. And I read you just spiritually, just energy-wise, as like a Black person. And I think I can feel some people who feel themselves very much into communities and some people who don't. And both those choices are fine. And like, just from what I know of you, I feel you, Shai, is like, you're with us 100%. And I love that. And I love people who make an affirmative choice in their life to be in with the Black community. Because I want people to be actively choosing us, because it's an amazing community and this culture is everything. This show has been everything. You guys have brought the spirit and the funk. I really love the energy and the courage and the heart you guys brought today. So like, congratulations and thank you for bringing everything and just laying on the line today. That is our show. Like, comment, and subscribe on our YouTube at Truth Talks Live. Support us by donating to Truth Talks Live or visiting our website. Become a VIP member of the Truth Lounge. Advertisers, small business owners, influencers, you can advertise here. Go to truthtalkslive.com. Get involved. We can let your message be known by our 10 million subscribers. So get involved with the Truth Talks family and let's build Black media together. Next week, we'll be joined by Judge Lauren Lake talking about what it means to live Black and bold and bodacious. I am all about that. Dr. B is all about that. Dimitri's all about that. Areva's been living her life all about that. So thank you so much for joining me. Truth Talks airs weeknights at 8 p.m. EST and 8 p.m. PST. We will be here for you, with you tomorrow.